Hello, Woodland. Good to see you again today. Sunday, November the 8th, is Stand Sunday. And on Stand Sunday, Christians are to stand with and for children and families in foster care. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today with Hope Shelton. She's here with us. So, Hope, would you please introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Yes, of course. I am with Child Protective Services, and I am the faith-based liaison for this part of Texas. So I cover Bexar County and our 27 surrounding counties, and I am the liaison for the community of faith when they say, "Hey, we want to partner with Child Protective Services. We want to help in some way." I am the person that you call so that we can get that process started.
Very good. We've known Hope here at Woodland for several years now. Patty Villarreal introduced us originally about, I guess it's been what, 4 or 5 years now, I
Yeah.
guess. Um, but tell us a little bit, what is the state of foster care in Bexar County?
Well, I will say, coronavirus has really impacted all of us individually, but our system of foster care, it's hit us. Our kids move around a lot. They move different homes, different facilities in all parts of Texas, sometimes even out of state. So coronavirus has really impacted and really made it challenging for our kids as far as, mental health, connections to family and friends, their neighborhoods. It's hard for them to not be able to have that time outside or to be able to go traditionally to school, right? So it's been really difficult. And our kids in foster care, they have, different struggles and they've been traumatized. And so it's really important for us to try to keep some normalcy for them, right? And to keep things consistent. So coronavirus, as it has for the rest of us, it's interrupted some of that. And so it's challenging. But I will tell you that foster care in this part of Texas, every year it varies a little bit, but we have approximately 2,000 kids or so that are coming into the foster care system. We have some that are going back home, some that are getting adopted. Every year, the numbers are kind of coming in and out. But we always sort of consistently have around 600 kids or so available for adoption just in this part of Texas. So across the state, there are 31,000 kids who are in foster care. And in this part of Texas, I mean, it's thousands of kids who are in foster care, who are in different homes and different facilities and placements. And so yeah, I mean, the state of foster care, it's much as it always is, but just a little bit compounded because of coronavirus and that social distancing and the need to have a separation from those that we really want to spend that time with, especially for our kids.
Well, I have a question I just thought of. I'm going to throw at you a curveball here. You mentioned this virus has been really tough on their mental health. What are some things y'all are doing to help out with that specifically?
So with our kids in care, all of our kids in care have Medicaid. And so they have access to resources for counseling. And some of that has moved virtual, right? That kind of
Mhm.
over video conferencing, counseling and that sort of thing. But always making sure that our kids are doing well with their mental health. So every time we're checking in with them ourselves and anyone else kind of involved in the case, we're checking in on their mental health, seeing how they're doing, seeing what they need, and then also connecting them to community resources. So it's really important, especially right now, that if there is someone who has those abilities to sort of interface with the community virtually, that they let us know, because we're always looking for more, providers who are willing to kind of partner with kids and families, even not just the kids who are in foster care, but their parents, their caregivers, foster families. Everyone, I think, is a bit challenging to have your kids constantly there, and so when you have kids who are struggling too, it can be a little bit more difficult.
Mhm. Um, Another question that I don't have on my list here, but it just hit me. What if someone was interested in being a foster parent or even foster to adopt? Who do they contact? Where do they go?
So in Bexar County, which is where we are and where most of our families will be from, the best way to get involved directly with foster care, the adoption through foster care system, is to go to familytapestry.org. So Family Tapestry, it's a long, complicated process, but basically in the state of Texas, we have a few different areas where we're trying to do what's called community-based care. And that means that we are moving some of the traditionally sort of held responsibilities of CPS caseworkers to a community partner. And one of the ways that we've done that in Bexar County is for foster care. So now placements are done with our partner agency, our community-based care partner, and that's Family Tapestry.
Okay.
So if you're in the area, if you're in Bexar County and you say, "Hey, I'm ready," or at least I want to learn more, I want to figure out what I can do, then you'll go to familytapestry.org and you just click on foster care and you kind of just look through the different partners. You can select faith-based partners, right? And you can find an agency who is a faith-based partner who will walk with you and help you get licensed to be a foster parent. And
Okay.
of course, they can also license you to adopt. So they can do both, the
Right.
majority of the agencies. So yes, that's what's happening in Bexar County. Now for everyone else not in Bexar County that's still in our section of Texas, they call agencies directly. But
Okay.
here we have a one stop. You can go to Family Tapestry and get all the information on the agency so you don't have to hunt all around, right, to try to find
Right.
something.
That's great. Makes it easy for people to be able to
Yes.
figure out that process.
Yes.
Yeah. Which can be a complicated and long process.
Yeah,
Um,
it is. And I think when you have more choice, or when you feel like you have more choice in finding an agency that works for you and for your family, then I think you're getting some of those questions answered up front. How long will it take? What are the requirements? How
right.
do I get started? Versus kind of feeling like you're floating around hoping for someone to help you. But this allows you to take a little bit more control and say, okay, these are the agencies I'm thinking about. Now let me call them and see who would be the perfect fit, right? So it
Right.
gives you, I think, a little bit more control and sort of starting that process and feeling like, you have the tools to really be successful in it.
Great. Thanks so much for that. I really appreciate that. And maybe somebody that's watching and listening, that'll scratch them a little bit, and that'll help them find out a little more information.
Yes.
Um,
And and I know we'll probably talk about it, but there's so many ways to help, especially for people when they want to be a foster parent or they want to adopt. But even for everyone else who says, it's not for me right now, or it's not the place I'm at, there's still so many ways to help kids and families who are in child welfare, right? Who are struggling with these issues and trying to get their kids back or trying to mend their families, right? So there's still so many ways to help, even if you don't actually have a kid come stay in your home. There's still a
right.
lot that you can do to impact their lives. So a lot of ways.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about that then. What are some things
Okay.
that churches can do and people in churches to help?
So right now, we're struggling through, muddling our way through, right? Coronavirus, all of us. But we're also coming up on the holiday season. So one of the things right now, we have a few different drives and kind of call outs in the community, and a lot of them are for meals, holiday meals. And so, it seems surprising sometimes, but the cost of a meal for a family who's struggling, they want to have a meal that's a celebration, just like every other family. And that $40 or $50 meal can really sometimes be cost prohibitive, and they're not able to do it. So one of our big pushes right now is for holiday meals. For Thanksgiving, if people have time, or for Christmas, let's sponsor families and let's get them baskets so they don't have to worry about it. They can still cook a meal at home. It can be all of, their trimmings and the way that they like it, but we're providing them with the items. So that's a really big push right now. And then, of course, even though we're 8 months into this pandemic, we still have some kids who are struggling with computer connectivity, right?
Hmm.
They're struggling to be at home doing classwork, and there's several kids who have to share one tablet or one laptop. So there's always a need, if there's someone out there who has that ability to donate something of that magnitude, but to help our kids get the connectivity that they need to be able to do their schoolwork. That's always something that we could do. And of course, we've already talked about it, but fostering and adopting, right? The need doesn't go away. While we're celebrating with our families, there are kids out there um, who wish that they could celebrate with a family, in a home setting. And so we're always looking for foster and adoptive families for our kids. And we're always looking for ways for people who are interested to share their talents, right? So you might have an idea that I've never thought of, but it's your talent. And so I want you to share with CPS what you're good at, right? So if you're a hairdresser or a barber, you can use that talent, right? If someone owns a business where they do lawn service, or where they're a plumber, they can help some of our relatives ready their home to be able to care for kids as they're coming in. So grandparents, a lot of times, aunts and uncles, they'll take kids in, but there's something that needs to be repaired before the kids can safely come, right? Things like that. The other two things that come to mind always are creating possibly ministries for beds or for bags, right? So we want to make sure that our kids in foster care, when they move, and they do move, or when we pick them up, or when they have to come into foster care, that's a very difficult time. I mean, it's difficult to imagine it when you haven't lived through it, but it's very chaotic for them. And so whatever we can do to help them get their items, and not put them in something that they feel ashamed for, right? We don't want to use trash bags. We don't want to use boxes. If we can have duffel bags. So if there was a church or a member who was willing to do duffel bags, right? A bag ministry or a bed ministry. So before kids can go back home, they need a bed. Before kids can go with a relative, they need a bed. And that's sometimes expensive for families to get. So being able to provide them with beds, it's a huge need. It's a huge need across the state. But there are some areas that have ministries that help with those things. And so if we had a ministry in this part of Texas, it would help a great many kids. So that's another way that even several churches can get together and create a ministry, right? Create a way to give in those ways. But ultimately, wherever your heart is leading you to share, just share. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out a way that works for you, because what works for one family may not work for another, or a single person or a family. There's so many different dynamics that we have going on. And right now, because of coronavirus, a lot of our face-to-face contact with kids, like mentoring, it's minimized because we're trying to prevent the spread of coronavirus. So some of those things will have to wait until we get this virus a little bit more under control, but we're still able to give. And so, like I said, those ministries, we're always collecting various items. So if someone says, hey, I really would like to donate something, you can just call me up. Like right now, it's those holiday meals is what we're looking for, right? But come January, it'll be something else. So yeah, those are just a few ways that we can get people involved right away in helping.
Right. So you would be our primary contact for finding
Yes.
out those needs. Is there some type of a website or something, a clearinghouse where we can find needs online or
Well, we
something?
do have a website and we do have some needs, but the needs, it's a statewide website. So it kind of gives you a
Okay.
generic list that works for most of us. But sometimes in a particular area, there's a unique need.
Right.
So the best way I always say is, no matter where you are, I mean, here we're all in this part of Texas, so I'll be your contact. But across the state, I always say reach out to your faith-based liaison and find out what they're collecting for that month. Because what happens is any donations that we get, we take. We're very appreciative because we have so many needs. But if it's not something that we're actively recruiting for, it takes us a little bit longer to get those items out, because people aren't thinking about it, or they didn't know that it was there, versus if we need jackets right now, then they go a little bit faster. And when we get the donations, we want them to go out immediately. We want those kids or those families to get it right away. So the best thing to do is just to call. But right now, for the rest of 2020, it's looking for those meals primarily. And then if there's another unique way that someone wants to share, duffel bags is all year long. That is every month, every day, because kids move constantly. So that's always a need too.
Okay. Um, what about social workers? How are they doing? I know it seems like the caseload is not something reasonable most of the time. And how are they holding up?
It's, well, child welfare work is challenging, not for the faint of heart, because you are working with people's lives, right? And decisions that you make have a rippling effect in the lives of these children and these families. And so it's challenging work to begin with. But I think the coronavirus has complicated it because you want to be able to see and spend time with the kids that you work with. You want to be able to hug on them and spend time. And sometimes that's tricky. You can't quite do that because you're still trying to be safe. And so I think workers are always concerned about their kids, always wanting to make sure they're okay. But I think right now that social, the isolation for them, we don't want them to be isolated from their friends or their favorite teachers or their little league team, and they can't do some of that. So caseworkers understandably have stress always, but they have an added layer because they're wanting their kids to be okay, and they're wanting the families that they work with to be able to get services quickly so that they can get their kids back home. So some of those things have been delayed, and so it's challenging right now. But caseworkers are doing well. We've tried to sort of support one another in house, right? And even though most people are still virtual, there's still a lot of connection over Zoom and video conferencing to kind of see someone's face, because you go from seeing someone every day to not seeing them at all. And so that's not easy. So just trying to make sure that we're checking in and make sure that everybody's okay, that everyone has a way that they can talk about concerns and share worries, and that they know that there's support from upper management all the way down to regional leadership, right? So So really, I think we're doing well. I think, but just concerned, just wanting to make sure that our kids are okay and that they're staying engaged in their communities.
Is there anything that churches can do to encourage or support the social workers and caseworkers?
Pray. Always prayer. Oh my goodness. There's never a bad day, right, to pray for child welfare workers. um, which, like you just said, stand Sunday, right, is coming up, and that's a national day of prayer. And on that day, we pray not just for caseworkers and not just for kids who are in foster care, but their biological families, and we can talk about that later, but we're praying for restoration, right, of families, and we're praying for healing, and we're praying for sibling connections, and we're praying that the people who are in the position to make decisions are making wise decisions, right? So our judges and our lawyers and our caseworkers and supervisors, that everybody is making wise choices for the best interest of these kids, because ultimately we want to keep families together, and if they're not together right now, we want to restore families. So that's number one. So prayer, I think, is gosh, is the most important thing. But I think I would say after prayer, finding a way to help lighten the load, right, for some of our caseworkers. So sometimes it's just connecting us to resources, right, because there's so many resources, but it feels like there's so little time in the day because you have so much to do, right?
Hmm.
And again, child welfare, it can alter lives, and so it's a big responsibility. And so I think if we have faith partners who can help lighten that load, um, even like I said, with just holiday meals, helping us to help our families, that is what really it moves caseworkers emotionally, but it also helps us to secure that piece of whatever that puzzle is, that food piece or that bed piece, to help that family. And that's ultimately what we need, because again, we're trying to get kids home. When they aren't home right now, they need to be home. And so whatever we can do to connect them, so if there's a service in the community maybe that someone knows about that already does, you know duffel bags or something like that, just connect us, because it may be a resource we don't know about, but that resource alone can lighten the load for caseworkers instead of having to try to find bags, right? That's one less
Right.
thing. So really, just really creating a partnership with CPS. That is besides prayer, that's the biggest thing, because caseworkers need someone else in the community that they can rely on to be a partner. And the faith community does that so well because you have stewardship, right? I mean, over these kids. They're part of our communities. They may be under the charge of CPS for a little while, but ultimately they are the community, right, that we're going to be a part of, and they're going to be with us. And so we want to make sure that they're connected. So connections in the community are huge. So I just encourage everyone to get beyond the four walls, right? And let's just see how we can get people to engage with us on that level, so that caseworkers really have that partnership in you. That is what we need. We need partnership.
Great. That gives hopefully several people some ideas of some things they can already begin to think about doing. And the last question, you've kind of already started talking about it a little bit, is how can we pray? What are some specific things we can pray about?
So, so again, I would say pray for the kids, right? This is a kids who are in foster care or kids who are involved in child welfare. They may be staying with a relative or something like that. This is one of the most traumatic things that they will go through in their life, and it is very difficult. It is not easy. And so pray for them, to be okay, for healing, for restoration, for our families. No matter what these parents are going through, no matter why they're involved in CPS, right? These parents love their kids, and these parents want their kids to be with them. And so we need healing for parents. Sometimes there are addiction issues or mental health issues or things that they need support to heal from, right? But we want families restored. We want these kids with their biological parents. When it's safe, when they can be, that's what we want. And then also, we have a lot of relatives who are caring for kids, right? So grandparents and aunts and uncles. And so they need support. And so praying for them to find the connections that they need to keep kids safe, right? Always is important. And of course, praying for safe and nurturing homes. If they can't be with their parents, and if they're not able to be with a relative, and they're in a foster home, or they're in a shelter of some kind, that the caregivers, the people who are watching out for them, that they would be nurturing and loving and kind to these kids, right? That they would have the skills to really help them heal, because that's kind of what foster care is all about. It's temporary care until you go home, or possibly if they're not able to go home, then they may be adopted, right? But these foster parents, these temporary caregivers, are helping these kids to heal. So praying that they have those skills, they develop those skills, that they can be able to help these kids get through this very traumatic time in their lives. Of course, for siblings, it's hard to imagine being removed, not being with your parents, but then on top of that, all 10 years you spent with your siblings, and now you're not with them. So it's compounded. So praying that we can have more placements that will take siblings together. Praying that if siblings, aren't together, that they can find their way back to each other, right? I mean, sibling relationships is huge for our kids. So I definitely want that. And then connections for our families, connections for our kids, people in their lives who just want to love on them. I pray that they find communities of faith, right? Wherever they are, wherever they're living, that they would be nurtured by a community of faith, that someone would pour into them that love of God that you and I both know, right? We've experienced in our own lives. But kids who've been hurt and who've been traumatized aren't necessarily feeling that right now, because all that they can feel is their trauma, or all that they're dealing with is the loss and the struggle. So finding a community that can wrap around them and just love on them, right? And kind of give them that God's love. So yes, I mean, I want communities of faith for all of these kids. And I think, again, like I said, the wise decision making, right? That our leaders, those who are in positions to determine outcomes for these kids, that they would listen, and that they would be prayerful, right? And that they would just make wise choices, so that these kids can heal, and that these families can be put back together, and that they can be okay, and that everybody will be safe. I mean, ultimately, that's what we want.
Well, thank you for all of that. Um, for Stand Sunday, Hope has given us Woodland um, some names of some children in foster care around Texas that we can pray for. You can pray for Hayden, who is 13. Sapphire is also 13. Lee is 2. Caitlin is 18. And Benjamin is 4. Remember these names specifically in your prayers as you pray for them to be hopefully reunited with their homes and their families, but that they would find a permanent and safe home that they could be a part
Yes.
of. Well, thanks so much for being with us and sharing with us today, Hope.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for all that you've done, because Woodland has done a lot to support our, child protective services and our kids and families, from face masks and using the building. I mean, you guys have done so much. And so we really appreciate your partnership. You have been a solid partner for a great many years. So we appreciate you, and we thank you and all of Woodland so much for being willing to partner with these vulnerable children and families in this part of Texas. It's been a blessing.
Thanks again, Hope. Thanks for all that you do.
Of course. Thank you.